The silence that falls after a scream is often more profound than the sound itself. It's in that ringing void, that hollow echo, that the true weight of absence settles. We are creatures of narrative, of cause and effect, of the comforting linearity of events. We build our lives on the scaffolding of understanding, piecing together the fragments of experience into a coherent whole. But what happens when that scaffolding crumbles, leaving us adrift in a sea of unanswered questions? What happens when a family, a community, a nation is left to grapple with a void so absolute, so inexplicable, that it defies the very logic of existence? This is the precipice upon which we stand today, gazing into the chilling abyss of the Sodder children's disappearance. It's a story that doesn't just whisper of tragedy. It roars with the unsettling possibility that some doors, once opened, can never be closed, that some enigmas are not meant to be solved, but to be lived with, a perpetual shadow cast upon the canvas of our understanding. The night of January 9, 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia, was meant to be like any other. The Sodder family, a vibrant tapestry of 10 souls, had settled into the familiar rhythms of their lives. George Sodder, a man of resilience and determination, had built a life for his family in the heart of Appalachia. His wife, Jenny, was the steady anchor, the keeper of hearth and home. Their children, a constellation of youthful energy, were the light in their lives. But on that fateful night, a spark, perhaps innocuous, perhaps malevolent, ignited a blaze that would consume not just their home, but their certainty, their peace, and 5 of their children, Maurice, Louis, Martha, Betty, and the youngest, Sylvia. The fire, a ravenous beast, devoured the wooden structure with terrifying speed, leaving behind only smoldering ruins and a gaping wound in the Sodder family's heart. What makes this particular narrative so deeply unsettling, so resistant to the balm of time and explanation, is not merely the loss of life, a sorrow common to all human experience. Instead, it is the chilling tapestry of anomalies, the defiant deviations from the expected, that elevate the Sodder case from a tragic fire to an enduring cosmic riddle. It's the fact that the fire itself seemed to defy the very laws of combustion as understood by those who rushed to the scene. It's the peculiar circumstances surrounding the initial response, the perceived failures and missed opportunities that have fueled decades of speculation. And most profoundly, it is the unwavering conviction of the Sodder parents, a conviction that hardened into an unyielding pursuit of truth, a testament to a love that refused to be extinguished by smoke and ash. This is not a story about finding a definitive answer, for perhaps no such answer exists in the neat, tidy boxes we so often construct. This is a journey into the heart of enduring mystery, an exploration of the limits of our knowledge, and a contemplation of the human spirit's capacity to persevere in the face of the unfathomable. We will delve into the heart of the night that fractured a family, examining the evidence, the theories, and the enduring questions that continue to haunt the Sodder name. We will attempt to understand not just what happened, but why it continues to resonate, why this particular tragedy has seeped into the collective consciousness, a stark reminder that sometimes the most profound truths lie not in the answers we find, but in the questions we are brave enough to ask. This is the story of the Sodder children, a story that begins with fire but ends, perhaps, with the enduring embers of human hope and the stubborn refusal to let the darkness win. The investigation, or rather the initial response to the inferno, immediately presented a series of perplexing deviations from standard emergency protocols, each contributing to the deepening enigma. Firefighters arrived, alerted by neighbors, only to discover a scene of utter devastation. The house, a substantial wooden structure, was reduced to an inferno of unimaginable intensity. Yet, amidst the chaos, several observations struck those present as profoundly aberrant. The fire department's ladder, a crucial piece of equipment for accessing upper floors or windows, reportedly failed to extend properly, its mechanism apparently rendered inoperable by the intense heat, or perhaps by some prior, unnoticed malfunction. More disturbingly, the water from the fire hoses seemed to have little effect on the conflagration, a phenomenon that baffled experienced firemen. The sheer ferocity of the blaze, described as unnaturally consuming, led some to question the very nature of what was burning. Further complicating the narrative were the reported efforts to rescue the trapped children. George Sodder himself attempted to enter the burning structure, but was reportedly driven back by the intense heat and smoke. Jenny Sodder, meanwhile, managed to escape with some of the children, but the sheer speed of the fire's engulfment trapped the others. The lack of any discernible remains, no identifiable bones or charred remnants that typically survive even the most intense fires, became a central pillar of the Sodder parents' unwavering belief that their children had not perished. This absence of physical evidence, a void where proof of death should have been, fueled their desperate hope and their relentless questioning of the official findings. It was as if the fire had not merely destroyed a home, but had somehow erased the very presence of its youngest inhabitants. The subsequent investigation, conducted by local authorities, concluded that the fire was accidental, likely caused by faulty wiring or a misplaced oil stove. However, this official pronouncement did little to assuage the Sodders' mounting suspicions. They pointed to a series of seemingly minor, yet cumulatively significant, oversights. For instance, the telephone lines were reported to have been cut, effectively isolating the family from summoning immediate help. Moreover, a fire alarm, a relatively new addition to the home, failed to sound. These details, seemingly small in the grand scheme of such a catastrophic event, began to weave a pattern of deliberate obstruction or, at the very least, a series of uncanny coincidences that strained credulity. The parents' insistence that these were not mere accidents, but rather elements of a calculated act, began to resonate with a growing number of skeptical observers. Adding another layer to the bewildering circumstances was the discovery of a fuse box, located in the attic, which George Sodder had recently removed due to concerns about its condition. He had planned to replace it, but had not yet done so. The official explanation suggested this faulty wiring might have been the cause. However, George Sodder himself had previously expressed his belief that the new wiring he had installed in other parts of the house was sound, and that the old fuse box, though removed, was not the source of the fire. This discrepancy, between the official theory and the father's first-hand knowledge of his home's electrical system, introduced a critical point of contention, suggesting that the investigation may have overlooked or deliberately ignored crucial details provided by the family. The profound psychological impact on the Sodder family cannot be overstated. The loss of 5 children in such a horrific and inexplicable manner would shatter any family. Yet, for the Sodders, this devastation was compounded by a persistent sense of injustice and a gnawing uncertainty. Their subsequent efforts to keep the case alive, to solicit public assistance, and to pursue any and all leads, however faint, speak volumes about their enduring commitment to finding the truth. They plastered their story on billboards, offered rewards, and continued to petition authorities for years, driven by an unyielding love and an absolute refusal to accept the official narrative. This unwavering dedication, in the face of overwhelming tragedy and official dismissal, transformed their personal grief into a public quest for answers, a testament to the enduring power of parental love against the backdrop of unresolved mystery. The Sodder parents' unwavering conviction that their children were not consumed by the flames hinged on a series of perplexing discoveries and actions that occurred in the immediate aftermath of the fire. Jenny Sodder, in her grief-stricken haste, had attempted to retrieve her purse from the burning house. While the main structure was a raging inferno, she reportedly managed to retrieve her purse, which contained, among other items, a block of ice. The peculiar detail here is the state of this ice. According to her account, the ice, though exposed to the intense heat, had not melted. This anomaly, seemingly insignificant to the untrained eye, became a potent symbol for the Sodders, suggesting that the fire's intensity had somehow been localized or even controlled, rather than being a uniform, all-consuming blaze. They argued that if the fire had been hot enough to obliterate human remains, it would certainly have melted any block of ice. Furthermore, the investigation's conclusion regarding the children's remains was based on a cursory examination of the debris. George Sodder, a man intimately familiar with his children, their belongings, and the very fabric of his home, was deeply unsatisfied with the findings. He insisted that the charred lumps unearthed by the fire department were not bone fragments, but rather pieces of hardened rubber, possibly from the family's car tires, which had been parked outside but near the house. He claimed that the heat from the fire had evidently been insufficient to incinerate these rubber components, yet had supposedly vaporized his children. This stark contrast in the perceived effects of the fire on different materials became a crucial point of contention, undermining the official narrative of complete annihilation. The family's attempts to solicit public interest and support for their cause often involved placing advertisements and distributing flyers. One such instance, a widely circulated flyer, featured a photograph of the missing children, alongside a poignant plea for information. This proactive approach wasn't just about public awareness. It was a desperate attempt to circumvent what they perceived as an inadequate or even negligent official investigation. They clung to any whisper of a sighting, any letter postmarked from a distant town, any anonymous tip that offered a sliver of hope. This persistent outreach created a fascinating ripple effect, drawing in amateur sleuths, journalists, and a curious public, many of whom found the official explanations as unconvincing as the Sodders themselves. Consider the psychological toll of such a sustained period of uncertainty. For George and Jenny Sodder, every passing year was not a step closer to acceptance, but another year of unanswered questions. They lived in the constant shadow of that January night, their lives irrevocably altered by the void left behind. Their persistence wasn't simply about finding lost children. It was about reclaiming a narrative that had been snatched from them, about asserting the truth as they understood it against a system that had, in their eyes, failed them. This enduring commitment, fueled by love and a profound sense of injustice, transformed their private tragedy into a public enigma, a stark illustration of how deeply personal loss can resonate when coupled with a compelling, unresolved mystery. The very fabric of their existence became intertwined with the quest, each day a testament to their refusal to let the silence win. A crucial, yet often overlooked, aspect of the Sodder enigma involves the family's subsequent actions and the peculiar nature of the evidence that emerged years later. Following the fire, the Sodders, fueled by an unyielding suspicion that their children had been abducted rather than perished, embarked on a relentless campaign to keep the case in the public eye. This wasn't mere grieving. It was an active investigation conducted by parents who refused to accept the official verdict. They distributed thousands of flyers nationwide, featuring a haunting photograph of the missing children, imploring anyone with information to come forward. This persistent outreach, a testament to their unwavering hope, began to yield unexpected results, albeit ones that further complicated the narrative. One particularly striking development was the receipt of a postcard, postmarked from Florida, which contained a cryptic message. "Maurice and Jenny, I have bad news. Martha is dead. I will pay you $5,000 for the return of George and Jenny. I can no longer keep them." The postcard was signed simply, "A Friend." This missive, arriving years after the fire, sent shockwaves through the already fractured Sodder household. The mention of Martha, one of the missing children, by name, and the explicit offer of a ransom for the surviving children, George and Jenny, seemed to confirm the parents' deepest fears that their children had indeed been taken. The specificity of the names, the mention of a substantial sum of money, and the chilling implication of continued captivity painted a grim picture, suggesting a deliberate act of abduction. The Sodders, naturally, pursued this lead with the same fervor they had applied to all other avenues. George Sodder even traveled to Florida, following the postcard's origin, but the trail had gone cold. The sender remained unidentified, the motive unclear, and the fate of the children mentioned in the postcard unresolved. This episode, however, cemented the abduction theory for the family and many who followed their case. It shifted the focus from a tragic accident to a potential crime, albeit one shrouded in mystery and years of silence. The very existence of such a communication, years after the supposed demise of the children, presented a profound challenge to the established narrative of the fire. Furthermore, the family's determination led them to commission a private investigator, a move underscoring their profound distrust of the official channels. This investigator, though his findings were never fully disclosed to the public, reportedly uncovered information that corroborated the Sodders' suspicions of foul play. The details of these findings remain largely speculative, adding another layer of intrigue to an already complex case. However, the very act of hiring external assistance highlights the depth of the Sodders' conviction and their willingness to exhaust every possible avenue in their quest for truth. This underscores a critical point. The Sodder case is not merely a historical footnote. It is a living testament to the enduring power of parental love and the human imperative to seek justice, even when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds and the chilling silence of the unknown. The persistence of the Sodder family in seeking answers, decades after the initial tragedy, serves as a powerful reminder that some stories refuse to be definitively concluded, continuing to echo through time, demanding our attention and our continued contemplation. The very nature of perception, particularly in the face of overwhelming trauma and official pronouncements, becomes a crucial element in understanding the Sodder family's enduring quest. When confronted with a devastating event, human psychology often seeks patterns, explanations, and a sense of closure. For George and Jenny Sodder, however, the established narrative of a tragic house fire simply did not align with their lived experience of that night and the subsequent years. Their insistence on abduction, rather than accidental death, wasn't born from a desire to avoid grief, but from a deeply ingrained belief that the physical evidence, or rather the lack thereof, pointed towards a different, more sinister truth. This subjective interpretation of reality, shaped by their unique vantage point as parents who believed their children were alive, became the bedrock of their continued investigation. Consider how the absence of identifiable human remains, a detail that official investigators might have dismissed as a consequence of extreme heat, was interpreted by the Sodders as definitive proof of their children's survival. This divergence in interpretation highlights the profound impact of personal knowledge and emotional investment on how individuals process information, especially when dealing with profound loss. Building on this, the Sodders' unwavering commitment to their children's cause also manifested in their proactive, almost obsessive, pursuit of any potential lead, however improbable. This tenacity wasn't merely about hope. It was about actively constructing an alternative narrative, one that acknowledged the possibility of their children's continued existence. Their creation and distribution of those now famous flyers, detailing the missing children and offering rewards, served a dual purpose. Beyond soliciting public assistance, these flyers acted as a constant, tangible reminder to themselves and to the world that the case was not closed, that the story was still being written. Now, think about how this persistent public appeal, a decades-long campaign of remembrance and inquiry, fundamentally altered the public's perception of the event. It transformed a local tragedy into a national enigma, inviting widespread speculation and fostering a sense of collective responsibility, or at least, collective curiosity, for the unresolved fate of the Sodder children. Conversely, the very act of continuing the search for so long also introduced a unique psychological burden. For the surviving Sodder siblings, growing up under the shadow of their missing brothers and sisters, and witnessing their parents' unyielding dedication, presented a complex emotional landscape. They were not only grappling with their own grief and the trauma of the fire, but also with the constant, unspoken hope that their lost siblings might reappear. This created a unique familial dynamic, where the absence was a palpable, ever-present entity, shaping their interactions, their memories, and their understanding of home. Imagine the weight of knowing your parents dedicated their lives to finding children you never knew, or knew only briefly, and the internal conflict that might arise from seeking normalcy amidst such profound, unresolved loss. This internal family dynamic, rarely explored in public accounts, adds a deeply human dimension to the broader mystery. Furthermore, the passage of time, rather than diminishing the Sodders' resolve, seemed to imbue their quest with a certain historical gravitas. As years turned into decades, the Sodder case became less about a single, immediate event and more about an enduring symbol of unresolved injustice. The unanswered questions, the peculiar circumstances, and the persistent hope of the parents coalesced into a narrative that resonated with a deep-seated human fascination for the inexplicable. Consider how this enduring narrative, fueled by persistent media attention and the continued efforts of the Sodder family, has allowed the mystery to transcend its original context. It has become a touchstone for discussions about parental love, the fallibility of investigations, and the human capacity to endure, to hope, and to question, even in the face of overwhelming despair. This sustained engagement with the unknown, this refusal to let the story fade into obscurity, is perhaps the most profound legacy of the Sodder children's disappearance. The very concept of closure, in the context of the Sodder children's disappearance, proves to be a deeply flawed construct, a desire for neat resolution that the facts of the case actively resist. For the Sodder parents, the official pronouncement of accidental death served not as an endpoint, but as an infuriating roadblock. Their persistent belief in abduction, fueled by the enigmatic postcard and the absence of conclusive evidence, means that the notion of closure, as typically understood, a peace found in acceptance, remained perpetually out of reach. Instead, their continued efforts represent a different kind of resolution, a commitment to an ongoing truth-seeking, a refusal to let the narrative be definitively closed by an unsatisfactory explanation. Think about how this pursuit itself became a form of living memorial, a continuous engagement with the memory of their lost children, rather than a passive surrender to fate. Furthermore, the psychological resilience demonstrated by George and Jenny Sodder, in the face of such profound and prolonged uncertainty, offers a compelling case study in human endurance. Their decision to maintain an active search, to keep the story alive through public appeals and private investigations for over 50 years, speaks to a remarkable internal fortitude. This wasn't simply stubbornness. It was a deeply ingrained conviction that truth, however elusive, was worth pursuing relentlessly. Now, consider the effect this unwavering dedication had on the surviving Sodder children. They grew up in a household where the absence of their siblings was an active, tangible presence, a constant undercurrent in their daily lives. This unique upbringing undoubtedly shaped their own understanding of loss, memory, and the very definition of family, creating a shared experience of profound, unresolved mystery that bound them together. Another crucial layer to this enduring enigma lies in the societal response to the Sodder case over the decades. The initial official investigation, perceived by many as cursory and insufficient, laid the groundwork for a persistent public skepticism. As time passed and new generations became aware of the story, the case evolved from a local tragedy into a sort of cultural touchstone for unsolved mysteries. The advent of the Internet, for instance, provided a new platform for disseminating information and theories, allowing amateur sleuths and armchair detectives to pore over the details, proposing their own explanations. This decentralized engagement with the case, while often speculative, demonstrated a collective human impulse to solve puzzles, to find order in chaos, and to offer potential answers where official ones had failed to satisfy. Conversely, the sheer longevity of the mystery has also contributed to its mystique. The fact that no definitive answers have emerged, despite numerous appeals and investigations, has allowed the Sodder children's disappearance to occupy a unique space in the public consciousness. It serves as a potent reminder that some questions may never yield simple solutions, that the universe, and human events within it, can sometimes defy our attempts at complete comprehension. Now, consider how this enduring ambiguity might influence our perception of other unresolved mysteries. The Sodder case, in its persistent refusal to be neatly categorized or definitively explained, has become a powerful metaphor for the limits of knowledge and the enduring allure of the unknown, prompting us to question the certainty of our own understandings. The Sodder family's unwavering conviction, a bulwark against the tide of official conclusions, also manifested in a rather unusual and unsettling practice: the erection of a billboard along the highway, a stark, unyielding testament to their enduring hope. This wasn't a fleeting gesture of grief. It was a permanent fixture, a daily reminder to the world, and perhaps to themselves, that the story was far from over. For over 50 years, this sign, bearing the faces of the missing children and a plea for information, stood as a silent sentinel, a beacon in the landscape of unanswered questions. Now, consider how this persistent, public declaration acted as a constant interrogation of complacency, forcing passers-by, and the community at large, to confront the unresolved nature of the tragedy. It was a visual echo of their internal struggle, a refusal to let the passage of time diminish the urgency of their quest. Moreover, the family's continued engagement with the case wasn't confined to passive appeals. It involved a proactive, almost forensic, approach to any scrap of information that surfaced. The Sodders meticulously documented every tip, every letter, every unsubstantiated sighting, creating an archive of their decades-long search. This methodical record-keeping, born from a deep-seated need for order in the face of chaos, became a testament to their intellectual commitment to uncovering the truth. It's akin to a detective meticulously piecing together clues, except in this instance, the investigators were parents driven by an immeasurable loss and an unshakable belief in the innocence of their children. This diligent compilation of disparate fragments, however speculative, served to build a counter-narrative that directly challenged the facile conclusions of the initial investigation. Building on this, the very nature of the evidence that did emerge, particularly the cryptic postcard, introduced a layer of psychological manipulation into the already fraught narrative. The mention of specific names, the implied threat, and the offer of a ransom suggest a calculated attempt to exploit the family's vulnerability. Now, consider how such a message, arriving years after the fire, could serve to both reignite hope and deepen suspicion, creating an emotional roller coaster for the Sodders. It's a stark illustration of how the absence of definitive answers can create fertile ground for conjecture, and how external actors, whether well-meaning or malicious, can further entangle an already complex situation. This external influence, the possibility of deliberate misinformation or even a perverse form of communication from an unknown party, adds a chilling dimension to the family's ongoing struggle. Conversely, the sheer passage of time, while amplifying the mystery, also presented the Sodder family with a unique challenge in terms of maintaining momentum and public interest. As the years progressed, original witnesses aged or passed away, and the initial urgency of the event naturally waned for many. Yet, the Sodders' sustained efforts, their refusal to let the case fade into obscurity, demonstrates a profound understanding of how to keep a narrative alive. Their continued outreach, their willingness to revisit the tragedy in interviews and public statements, ensured that the questions surrounding their children's fate remained relevant, preventing the case from becoming merely a historical footnote. This sustained engagement, a testament to their indefatigable spirit, highlights the power of personal commitment in the face of overwhelming odds and the enduring human fascination with the unresolved. The Sodder family's unwavering conviction, a bulwark against the tide of official conclusions, also manifested in a rather unusual and unsettling practice: the erection of a billboard along the highway, a stark, unyielding testament to their enduring hope. This wasn't a fleeting gesture of grief. It was a permanent fixture, a daily reminder to the world, and perhaps to themselves, that the story was far from over. For over 50 years, this sign, bearing the faces of the missing children and a plea for information, stood as a silent sentinel, a beacon in the landscape of unanswered questions. Now, consider how this persistent, public declaration acted as a constant interrogation of complacency, forcing passers-by, and the community at large, to confront the unresolved nature of the tragedy. It was a visual echo of their internal struggle, a refusal to let the passage of time diminish the urgency of their quest. Furthermore, the family's continued engagement with the case wasn't confined to passive appeals. It involved a proactive, almost forensic, approach to any scrap of information that surfaced. The Sodders meticulously documented every tip, every letter, every unsubstantiated sighting, creating an archive of their decades-long search. This methodical record-keeping, born from a deep-seated need for order in the face of chaos, became a testament to their intellectual commitment to uncovering the truth. It's akin to a detective meticulously piecing together clues, except in this instance, the investigators were parents driven by an immeasurable loss and an unshakable belief in the innocence of their children. This diligent compilation of disparate fragments, however speculative, served to build a counter-narrative that directly challenged the facile conclusions of the initial investigation. Building on this, the very nature of the evidence that did emerge, particularly the cryptic postcard, introduced a layer of psychological manipulation into the already fraught narrative. The mention of specific names, the implied threat, and the offer of a ransom suggest a calculated attempt to exploit the family's vulnerability. Now, consider how such a message, arriving years after the fire, could serve to both reignite hope and deepen suspicion, creating an emotional roller coaster for the Sodders. It's a stark illustration of how the absence of definitive answers can create fertile ground for conjecture, and how external actors, whether well-meaning or malicious, can further entangle an already complex situation. This external influence, the possibility of deliberate misinformation or even a perverse form of communication from an unknown party, adds a chilling dimension to the family's ongoing struggle. Conversely, the sheer passage of time, while amplifying the mystery, also presented the Sodder family with a unique challenge in terms of maintaining momentum and public interest. As the years progressed, original witnesses aged or passed away, and the initial urgency of the event naturally waned for many. Yet, the Sodders' sustained efforts, their refusal to let the case fade into obscurity, demonstrates a profound understanding of how to keep a narrative alive. Their continued outreach, their willingness to revisit the tragedy in interviews and public statements, ensured that the questions surrounding their children's fate remained relevant, preventing the case from becoming merely a historical footnote. This sustained engagement, a testament to their indefatigable spirit, highlights the power of personal commitment in the face of overwhelming odds and the enduring human fascination with the unresolved. What's more, the Sodder family's relentless pursuit extended to a deeply personal examination of the fire's origins, focusing on the seemingly mundane details that authorities dismissed. George Sodder's meticulous efforts to retrace the events of that night, including his insistence on the house's structural integrity and the specific placement of furniture, aimed to dismantle the simplistic explanation of faulty wiring. He often spoke of how the fire seemed to behave unnaturally, consuming certain areas with an almost selective ferocity. Now, reflect on how this detailed, almost obsessive, reconstruction of the physical environment by a parent intimately familiar with his home serves as a powerful counterpoint to the detached, procedural approach of the initial investigators. It's the difference between understanding a space through lived experience versus through a sterile report. Furthermore, the societal impact of the Sodder case, particularly in its later decades, can be viewed through the lens of evolving investigative techniques and public awareness. As forensic science advanced and media platforms proliferated, the Sodder story found new audiences and renewed scrutiny. The accessibility of information online, for instance, allowed a new generation to engage with the case, fostering communities of amateur investigators who meticulously dissected the available evidence. This decentralized engagement, while sometimes leading to unsubstantiated theories, also served to keep the memory of the Sodder children alive, preventing their story from succumbing to the erosion of time and official neglect. It transformed a private tragedy into a public, ongoing investigation, fueled by collective curiosity. Reflecting on this journey so far, we find ourselves at a crucial juncture, where the disparate threads of inquiry begin to coalesce into a more discernible, albeit still enigmatic, pattern. The initial shockwaves of an inexplicable event have rippled outwards, shaping not just the lives of those directly affected, but also our collective understanding of certainty and the limits of empirical resolution. We have traversed the landscape of profound loss, navigating the treacherous terrain where accepted explanations falter, and the human spirit grapples with the sheer recalcitrance of mystery. The very fabric of what we thought we understood about cause and effect, about the predictable arc of events, has been tested, revealing the inherent fragilities within our frameworks of comprehension. As we pivot towards the final reflection, it becomes clear that the profound implications of this narrative extend far beyond the immediate circumstances of a single night. The enduring questions, like persistent stars in a vast, unchartable sky, guide our gaze towards a deeper contemplation of human resilience and the innate drive to seek meaning in the face of the incomprehensible. The echoes of unanswered inquiries resonate not as mere historical curiosities, but as potent reminders of the profound impact that unresolved enigmas can have on the human psyche, shaping perceptions and fostering a perpetual dialogue between hope and uncertainty. The exploration of this singular tragedy has, in essence, illuminated the intricate interplay between individual perception and objective reality, underscoring how deeply personal experiences can forge an unshakable conviction that stands apart from prevailing narratives. This divergence, this quiet insistence on an alternative truth, has a way of subtly reshaping our understanding of how evidence is weighed and how definitive conclusions are reached. It's akin to observing a complex tapestry. While some focus on the overall design, others are drawn to the individual threads, each carrying its own weight and significance, contributing to a reality that is richer and more nuanced than a superficial glance might suggest. In light of these insights, the path forward, towards our concluding thoughts, becomes less about finding a singular, definitive answer and more about embracing the profound questions that remain. The unfolding of this story has demonstrated that sometimes, the most impactful takeaways lie not in the resolution of a mystery, but in the enduring power of the human spirit to persevere, to question, and to hold on to hope, even when the world around them seems determined to offer only silence. This journey has prepared us to consider the broader implications, to understand how such profound enigmas shape our collective consciousness and our ongoing quest for meaning within the grand, often inscrutable, tapestry of existence. The lingering silence after the Sodder fire is not an empty void, but a resonant space where the profound questions of existence find their voice. We have journeyed through the ashes of a family's tragedy, not to unearth a definitive answer, but to bear witness to the enduring power of human conviction in the face of an abyss. The story of the Sodder children is not merely a chronicle of loss. It is a testament to the very human imperative to seek truth, to hold on to hope, and to challenge the narratives that seek to impose an incomplete order upon the chaos of life. Our exploration has revealed how deeply personal conviction can diverge from official pronouncements, forging a reality shaped by an unyielding belief in the unseen. The Sodders' insistence on abduction, their meticulous documentation, and their decades-long vigil on that roadside billboard were not acts of denial, but profound assertions of love and a refusal to accept a conclusion that felt fundamentally untrue. This unwavering dedication transformed a devastating event into a living enigma, a persistent question mark etched into the landscape of American lore, reminding us that sometimes the most potent truths are those that stubbornly resist easy categorization. In this enduring mystery, we find a mirror reflecting our own innate desire to comprehend the inexplicable. The Sodder case compels us to consider the limits of certainty, the fallibility of human systems, and the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit when confronted with the unfathomable. It teaches us that closure is not always found in definitive answers, but can reside in the persistent pursuit of understanding, and the courage to keep asking questions even when the silence seems absolute. The true practice begins now, to carry this spirit of inquiry, to recognize the power of conviction, and to approach the unexplained not with fear, but with a profound respect for the enduring mysteries that shape our world and our place within it. The echoes of the Sodder children's story call us to look deeper, to question more readily, and to understand that the most profound journeys are often those that lead us into the heart of the unknown, forever changed by the questions we dare to embrace.